12 News breaking news now.
And that breaking news is the biggest break yet in the case of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance and kidnapping. The FBI just released new video and images from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera from the early morning of her disappearance. And you can see the video shows a person wearing a mask and a backpack and gloves at the 84-year-old's front door. The man is armed and carrying a backpack and appears to have tampered with and even taken that camera.
FBI Director Kash Patel said that the Bureau recovered the previously inaccessible images from, quote, residual data located in back-end systems. Now, it took over the course of 8 days to retrieve this video and the pictures. The FBI, of course, hopes that the public can help identify that person you see right there in this video. Now, in a social media post following the release of those images, Savannah Guthrie said the family believes Nancy Guthrie is still alive and is urging anyone with any information to come forward. Thanks so much for joining us for 12 News at 1. I'm Tram Mai.
And I'm Troy Hayden. So we are dedicating the show basically to all these new developments. And let's go back, if we can, to that video we showed you a little bit earlier. It was released about, 10:20 this morning?
Right.
So a little over a couple of hours ago. And we're going to start with these still images. And these are the first ones that came out. And you can see somebody walking from the street area onto Nancy Guthrie's front porch. They're wearing a ski mask. They're wearing full coverage on their arms with some sort of a sweatshirt or a sweater, a backpack. They have what appears to be almost combat-looking pants and boots on, and gloves as well, walking up to that door.
And you can see in the middle of his waistband there is a pistol. And obviously those gloves, they're very insulated, it looks like. Maybe perhaps he was wearing several gloves and that he's using to cover that camera right there. And one thing that we noticed, one piece of video, I don't know if it's within this, this loop that we have going on here, is that when he walks up, on his backpack, there it is, you see some reflective material right there. That was very indicative of this backpack that is very full. So of course, you know, investigators are hoping that anything that could be identifiable, from the clothes to the backpack, anything at all, could help lead to some clues as to who this person is.
From the very beginning of this case, we've had very few clues. We had the ransom note that we still at this point don't know if it's legitimate or not.
Right.
So this, of course, is huge. And again, to kind of talk about what we talked about earlier, it's taken this amount of time for the FBI and other investigators to reach out. The Nest is the camera, the parent company is Google, to reach out to those two companies and get this video that apparently was saved on some sort of server somewhere and get it out. But you can see it's very clear video, but the question is, what does it tell us?
Exactly, and that's why FBI is really urging people to take a good, hard look. Maybe people recognize the eyes. Maybe they recognize the way this man carried himself, the way he moved, the way he walked, just really anything at all. The size of this man. So here is the updated missing person alert that FBI has now put out. In addition to, of course, Nancy Guthrie's picture right there, they're showing these 3 images of this suspect that could possibly, most likely, be responsible for kidnapping Savannah Guthrie's mother.
So, you know, this case has grabbed the nation's attention over the past week, almost week and a half at this point. And it is unsettling to think that a man who's obviously prepared to commit this crime has this 84-year-old woman. So we have a lot of coverage coming your way. Let's go ahead and go down to Tucson if we can. Gabriela Becerra, you have been covering this story from the very beginning. First of all, what's happening down there right now?
Well, Troy, out here, the only law enforcement presence we've seen all day today are just the deputies who are now staged outside of Nancy's home. That's a 24/7 staging for these deputies. It's been in place for the last 48 hours or so, and that was at request of the family to protect the property. But out here, as you mentioned, this case is getting a lot of national attention, and that's in part due to the amount of media that is covering it for blocks. And Troy, you were out here, you know, there's just so many media outlets stretching down the street. So as soon as those new photos and videos were released, we immediately saw a lot of flurry from the media, because this, like you mentioned, is the first big development that we've seen in the week that we've been covering it. Those videos came from this doorstep behind me. I want to point out that there is a lot of desert landscaping in the way between the videos and the street from where we are, and that's a big part of why we haven't seen any neighbor video that has detected anything. So from what we can tell, just so far we have video from those doorbell cameras, but that doorbell has been missing since this case started, and the sheriff's office tells us that they have not been able to locate the doorbell. And so again, you heard that they've been working with the software companies to be able to get those images back and be able to see them. But we do know that this investigation is ongoing at multiple locations. The sheriff's office told us that they plan to be back out here today. Investigators will be conducting follow-up on new leads, is what they say. And so they said we can expect to see them at Nancy's house and also her daughter Annie's house, who lives about 10 minutes away from here. We've seen them at her house periodically through the week. Another thing I want to point out is it was FBI Director Kash Patel who first posted these images and videos, and we know that he is in Tucson currently. He is here on unrelated business, supposedly, but he's also being briefed on this case throughout the week, every day, we're told. And so we knew it was very possible that he would be visiting the command post that has been set up 24 hours around the clock. The FBI is bringing in agents from all over the country. Every day they tell us new agents are arriving to be able to help out with this case. And so a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. Just because we're not seeing investigators working in front of Nancy's house anymore, that doesn't mean that they're not spending every minute of the day trying to figure out who that person in these videos are and where Nancy is. Troy and Tram.
You know, Gabriella, here we are. It is day 10. This is finally a first big break in this case after going on pretty much not a whole lot of information aside from when Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped on the very first night on that Sunday early morning hour. But, you know, as you stand there, we have seen waves of law enforcement come and go. And so take us back, because I know you've covered this extensively. Troy and I have been down there as well. We've seen, 36 plus media out there getting all this national attention. But we've seen, law enforcement really come and go and look at specific areas of the house. Take us back to what they've been doing for the past couple of days.
Well, Tram, I would say there's probably been 3 major searches of Nancy's house. The first one was when investigators first determined that she was missing, and that investigation, covered the entire property and beyond. We know they had search teams going through a lot of the desert landscaping that is around her neighborhood, going door to door in her neighborhood, asking neighbors if they had any camera. The second one was, if you remember, when the FBI became more involved in the case. They came back to do their own investigation, double check to make sure that they did in fact have all the evidence they needed. And then they came back for a third time, and that's when we saw them searching the backyard, more specifically the roof. They also that night towed Nancy's car out of her garage and into evidence. And so apart from those 3 big searches, we have seen investigators just on the property over the weekend. In fact, we saw 2 investigators appear to be looking at some sort of septic tank or manhole that's in the back of Nancy's property. And so they're just looking everywhere and anywhere, and we're told that's normal in an investigation like this. As they get new leads, they have to go back and kind of check out what they're hearing.
I had somebody, Gabby, ask me just a few minutes ago, what about Ring doorbell cameras or other cameras there in the neighborhood? From what I remember, they said, isn't there a house directly across the street? From what I remember, kind of where you're standing right now is another street that goes up. Then I remember kind of an empty lot kind of off to the other side, and I don't think anybody's looking directly down at her home, from what I remember. That's number one. And number 2, this is at least a 50-year-old neighborhood. Most of the homes are set back off the street, and the vegetation in front is mature. So you can see how other cameras wouldn't catch a car. You would assume at some point this perpetrator had a car in that neighborhood.
That's right, Trey. And I have been talking to some of the neighbors out here, and they tell me they do have cameras, but because of the vegetation, because of this landscaping that's kind of all over, grown out, they weren't able to really see to the road. And so that's something they've been looking through, trying to keep a close eye. But like you said, it's just too difficult to see through. But now maybe with these new images, it'll point to something that they didn't see before that can give them an idea. But at this point, they had not had a car identified that they could see from the street. And that's something a lot of these neighbors tell me they're thinking about, knowing that, the cameras that they do have in place didn't catch, a situation like this when they needed it to. And so, yeah, it's hard to see. Luckily, the doorbell camera, we see that person walk directly up to the doorbell. They didn't have any brush in between them. But if that camera tried to pick up from the street, it likely wouldn't have been able to because of just all of this landscaping.
And one last thing. So I also want to point out, and you were there as well, Tram, but that neighborhood is kind of set off on its own. There are main streets around, but they're probably, what would you say, a quarter mile, half a mile away?
Yeah.
They're a ways out. So you would think the main streets might have cameras to catch somebody in that area, but that little neighborhood I wouldn't think does.
And we know with the main streets, authorities have been looking at the main streets, possibly their cameras as well, the nearby, I believe it was the convenience store, the Circle K or what have you. But Gabrielle, I'm wondering, do we know when the FBI or law enforcement will be back out there again to survey and assess exactly any more clues at all? Because I feel like every time we have a little bit more, like on Friday, for instance, when that second note was sent to the local KOLD TV station down there, literally within hours, law enforcement swarmed that house once again. So now that we have another break, when do we think that law enforcement will be back out there once again looking for any more details?
Well, Tram, the Pima County Sheriff's Department told us yesterday that we could expect to see investigators conducting follow-up at both the Guthrie residences yesterday and today. But really, honestly, at any time, as soon as they get that information, they come out here to check it out. I don't know if it will be as much of a large-scale investigation or search that we've seen in the times past, but we do know that they said we can expect to see investigators on the property looking into new leads they describe. And so unsure if that's in relation to these pictures that we're now seeing or something else they're hearing. They're still getting hundreds of tips every day about Nancy's disappearance. And so they, of course, have to take each one of those very seriously and conduct follow-up. We haven't seen anyone yet, but we'll be sure to update you as soon as we do. And one more thing that I wanted to point out that we heard from the Sheriff's Department today is that they do not plan on having a press conference so far today. At first, they were telling us as soon as the next big development happened, they would be speaking, but today they have not yet planned one. So as soon as we hear if one becomes scheduled for later today, we'll let you know as well.
Yeah, and it seems like the FBI taking the lead, at least at this point. Gabby, thank you so much. And we'll have more from Gabby throughout the day here on 12 News and our other crews that are heading out there. Let's go ahead now and talk to a former FBI special agent, Lance Lysing. Lance, thank you for being here today. You've had a chance to look at this tape, I'm sure. First of all, give me your overall impressions. How useful is this?
This is the break in the case that they needed. This breathes life back into the case. Not only can you put that image out there and get relevant tips this time, not just random tips that I'm sure they're getting thousands of, but you also have dozens of items in that surveillance image to follow up on. A unique holster, the potential gun that's in there, or potentially a fake gun just meant to intimidate. That the shape of that looks unusual. The shape of the holster and where it's located is definitely unusual. Unique items that he's wearing, the backpack, the jacket, multiple layers, almost excessive layers of clothing and gloves that he's wearing when he goes up there. I mean, this is the break in the case that they needed. And hopefully it will help them triage and prioritize tips as they come in. Because if a tip identifies something in that surveillance video that they've seen, then they know it could be legitimate and they need to follow up on it right away.
Lance, I'm wondering, you brought out a lot of details. Of course, the fact that he was armed, the holster, the backpack. But what else speaks to you about him? Whether it's from the demeanor, the movements, how he looks, how sophisticated perhaps he may seem, how familiar he may seem. What else speaks to you about the video and the images?
I think there's a lot you could take from it. He doesn't look to be that nimble when he's walking up there. That could be the darkness around him rather than just his normal gait. Looks like he's maybe has a flashlight in his mouth. You see a light that appears sometimes. I'm not sure if that's a reflection or a light. It looks to me like a light that he's wearing holding in his mouth at times. Um, you can also tell that he's not very sophisticated, at least in my opinion. He walks up, he almost looks surprised that that Nest camera is there off to the side. If he wanted to conceal his movement all the way up there and get to the side of that Nest camera and then disable it, probably could have. So I don't think he's all that sophisticated. I think he went to great lengths to conceal his face, but it doesn't look like he did a lot of reconnaissance or planning. The
That's
backpack is also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that's interesting that you're mentioning that. Sorry, yeah, go. The backpack has also intrigued me. Go into that, Lance. That looks like a very full backpack.
The back, yeah, that's exactly right. Very full backpack. The first thing that jumped out at me, this video is not going to be able to tell motive, but you can get some indicators from here. So that full backpack, why are you carrying so many items or such apparently full backpack into the house? Now, those could be, I mean, you could assume a lot of things. It could be restraints if he's looking to kidnap the victim.
That's a lot of
However, it could
restraints.
also be exactly. It could be bags to take something out that he thinks is valuable inside that house, and he's going to take something away. So the motive could have been a direct robbery, and then something goes wrong in that house.
You know,
Nancy unfortunately gets hurt, which is evidenced by the blood, and then his plans change.
I thought it was interesting that he went back to pick up those flowers and use it to cover the camera. Why not? I mean, he's using his other hand. Why not just open his hand and block that camera with the palm of his hand? It's big enough, obviously, with the multiple gloves, perhaps. But, you know, I feel like moving away from the camera, that shows more movement. Did that strike you as odd as well?
It's irrational. And not that anybody who would do a crime like this is irrational, right? But that's an irrational reaction. You're going to grab a small bush or weeds from the front yard to try to conceal your face going back up towards that camera. He wasn't planning for that camera to be there. He wasn't expecting that. And that was his reaction when he had to make a change of plans, which likely stayed the same inside the house. If it's not going exactly like he planned, his actions could have been irrational inside the house as well.
All right, Lance, you brought up a couple of things early on that I kind of want to explore a little bit more. You talked about how unusual the holster of the gun was. Go into that. What kind of holster do you think this is, and why is it unusual?
Yeah, so most holsters that are worn along the belt are worn either on the left or right hip or sometimes in the small of the back. Front like that, very unusual. The only time you'd wear a front holster if it's like a secondary weapon and it's up on a tactical vest or something. But down low where it is like that, that's unusual. The length of that holster is also unusual. If you look how long that is, that doesn't strike me as a typical holster for like a normal semi-automatic handgun that most people would carry. It has a potential, and that's why I say potential weapon, because it looks a little fake. At least the holster does to me. The weapon itself you can't see very well. So it's possible, and this happens often in robberies, where people carry fake weapons in order to intimidate, but not necessarily to hurt.
So now that we have an idea of finally kind of almost putting a face to this suspect, if you will, where does the FBI go from here? They've released all well, I don't know about all, but they've released some of these images, some of the video. Now what are they going to do?
Well, it's a good point saying they released some of the video. I like to think that they were able to obtain a lot more video. There were other cameras inside that house, a lot more video, and they know a lot more. Just showing the dedication of going back to the Nest company and the dedication of Nest in order to search through retained data to try to find this. Now, I've done this on multiple cases. It rarely is successful. Rarely are you able to pull old data from within a system out to get this. So this shows dedication to get that done on all sides. But then where you go, it focuses your case. Now you've got something to focus on. It's a slog when you have no real leads, you have no identity or photo of a suspect. Now it comes all back together. You're able to prioritize, triage, work things you think are important, put the resources there, and start pushing to the back burner things that are obviously no longer important.
You know, Lance, something that's circling around on social media right now is all this AI. You know, Grok, show me this guy's face. Does technology exist that you're aware of that can actually do this? Does the FBI ever do that? use that kind of AI type technology?
You mean to like remove the ski mask?
Yeah.
Uh, Funny. There's an old wives' tale of a bank robbery investigation where, in the interview, the bank robber is wearing a ski mask, and in the interview, we say, "Hey, the FBI has all this technology. We're just going to use our equipment to remove the mask from this video, and we'll be able to see your face." And then the subject confesses. I don't know if that actually happened or not, but that's an old wives' tale we used to talk about in the bureau all the time. I'm not aware of evidence like that. Now, there are certain facial structures that you can see. There's body structures that you can see, and maybe AI can help with that, identify other people who have similar facial structures or mannerisms or movements. But actually removing something like a face mask, I think, is something I would love to see, but I don't
A
think
little science fiction at this
exists.
point.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, I've seen reports where when they've tried to do that, when somebody is masked, it's gone wrong. So clearly, AI, as we've seen even, in writing form, it's gotten facts wrong. So, it's definitely a risk, maybe something to look into, but I don't think that you can put it 100% stock into that. Yeah.
What these videos allow is old-fashioned police work to kick in. Track these items down, talk to people who have sold them, identify people who have bought them. It's old-fashioned police work after a tip like this that will solve it.
Does this tell you anything? And I find this video actually disturbing to me because I just think about some elderly, like an aunt or somebody, 84 years old, and this masked person who looks like they're walking off a Hollywood set, right? It's kind of like the typical boogeyman coming in. Does this tell you at all anything, give you any insight as to whether or not Nancy Guthrie may have survived this? If she's in the hands of this person for a week and a half?
So it's difficult to say, and we only know maybe 1% of what investigators know. So there's a lot of information out there we don't know. All I can do is look to history and look to probabilities. And for a financially motivated kidnapping, for there not to be immediate communication with the family who would pay that money, or immediate attempts in order to get that money and release that victim, especially when that victim is so old, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't look like this person would be able to maintain a victim of that age, non-ambulatory, with medical conditions for such a long period of time. That's what I would worry about.
We do want to believe in a miracle, don't we?
Yeah, well, I mean, Savannah and her siblings are, and the grandkids, and everybody's involved in this. All right, Lance, thank you so much.
You gotta
I appreciate
have hope.
all your insight for sure. Is there anything else that we missed that you want to talk about here? We got like 2 minutes left.
No, I mean, I love that there's a break in this case. Like when I said it gives hope, it gives hope to investigators, it gives hope to the family. I mean, the public should be looking at these very closely. And if you have any indication that you've seen items that you see in that video or an individual that has mannerisms like that, please call the FBI.
All right, Lance Lysing, former FBI special agent. Lance, thank you so much. Good
Great
talking with
insight.
you. I'm sure we'll talk with you again.
Thank you. Well, it's now been 10 days since Savannah Guthrie's beloved mom disappeared. Late yesterday, Savannah posted a new video pleading to the public for help.
NBC's Liz Kreutz has more.
This morning, the Guthrie family making a direct appeal. In that new video, Savannah thanking people across the country for their prayers and asking for help finding her 84-year-old mom, even those far from the crime scene here in Tucson. The FBI also putting up these digital missing persons billboards donated by advertising giant Clear Channel in dozens of cities in the region. Meanwhile, we're learning more about how the Guthries first discovered Nancy was missing. A source close to the family telling NBC News that Nancy and her friends regularly gathered to watch church services together online. When Nancy didn't arrive at a friend's house Sunday morning, the friend called her daughter Annie. And now, as the search enters its 10th day, the deadline given in an alleged ransom demand has passed. The FBI says it's not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers. Law enforcement has not verified the authenticity of the ransom note sent to 3 news outlets last week, demanding $6 million worth of Bitcoin. As the FBI works to determine who may be behind the demand, former hostage negotiator Jim Kavanaugh says certain aspects of the note, which he reviewed, made him question its legitimacy.
Regardless of proof of life, they don't even prove they're the actual abductors. So they could come from anywhere in the world.
On Saturday, Savannah posted another heart-wrenching video saying she and her siblings, Annie and Cameron, were willing to pay for the safe return of their mother.
We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace.
Don't give up the ship. There's no proof of life, but there's no proof of death either.
All right, so that's kind of a look back, and obviously that was done before we got these new images that are coming from the Nest camera. This situation has gotten the attention of the White House. A little earlier today, Caroline Leavitt, who's the press secretary for President Trump, made a statement on it. Here it is.
Was once again with the president. He and I were both reviewing the newly released surveillance footage from FBI in the Savannah Guthrie case on just this heartbreaking situation with respect to her mother. The president encourages any American across the country with any knowledge of the suspect to please call the FBI, who continue to assist state and local authorities who are leading this investigation on the ground. And once again, I will reiterate that the prayers of this entire White House are with Savannah and her family at this time, and we hope this person is found soon and that her mother is brought home safely.
From the administration a couple of days ago that they were making this case a priority. The FBI director, Kash Patel, is there in Tucson and has been for a couple of days now. And obviously a lot of resources went into obtaining this video. So
there's even a command post that's been set up in Tucson, so many extra resources and really law enforcement beyond the Tucson area. So a lot of people stepping in, a lot of law enforcement helping in this case. Well, right now we want to go back out live to Tucson and to Gabriela Becerra, who has been covering this extensively. Gabriela, has there been any movement at all? Anything changed since we last saw you?
Nope, just the two deputies who will continue to be staged in front of Nancy Guthrie's home. Again, they're just pretty much sitting in their cars, getting out occasionally when they see perhaps someone getting a little too close to the property. Last night, we did see, though, the deputies appear to, just take a flashlight and search the property, assumably just to make sure that nobody was trespassing. But I want to point out that just because we don't see investigators here at the property, we know that they are busy working around the clock throughout the Tucson area. So a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. We know they've been going to businesses along some of the main roads in this area, asking to see surveillance video, checking to make sure they didn't see anything strange the night that Nancy disappeared or was possibly abducted. And so just because we don't see any investigators physically searching the property now, we know that they are busy working. There's that command post that's been set up. And so they have investigators from all over the country with different expertise coming in to try and figure out who possibly took Nancy, where she is now, and anyone who could be involved.
You know, Gabriela, it's interesting when we were down there, and Troy, I don't know if you noticed this on Thursday, but at least on Friday when I was down there, both families, both Annie's house and Nancy's house, had private security. There were no law enforcement or Pima County Sheriff's deputy vehicles, kind of securing the house. I've seen in your backdrop, I've seen, deputy vehicles there securing the house now. So is the private security gone and more law enforcement has stepped in and stepped up? Gabby, can you hear me?
At Nancy's house, we have not seen any private security on this property since these deputies have taken over. We do know that Annie's house continues to have private security, someone who's been sitting outside, again, making sure that nobody's trespassing on the property. But as far as here, we haven't seen private security in a few days, just these deputies, again, who have doing shift changes. They've been switching out every few hours. Sometimes we see only one of them, sometimes there's two, but just as long as they have eyes on this property.
Gabriela Becerra live for us down in Tucson. Thank you, Gabby. And again, if you're just joining us now, the largest break that we've seen so far in this week and a half old case. We'll show you the images one more time from a Nest camera on Nancy Guthrie's porch. These released by the FBI.
Both video, as you see right here, and also still images that took 8 days for the FBI to recover. So obviously very meticulous, strenuous work, but this is what they have released just a couple of hours hours ago. And of course, they are hoping that anyone with any information, maybe you recognize the clothing, the backpack, the eyes, whatever it could be, that hopefully any tip, any lead will help FBI locate not only the suspect, but also Nancy Guthrie.
We have multiple crews down in Tucson. We'll have coverage throughout the day today on 12 News and also streaming on 12 Plus.
And don't forget, we're also going to have a very special 30-minute live stream newscast with experts tonight at 7 o'clock. They're going to analyze the latest in the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping case. Of course, don't miss it. Make sure you download our 12 News app and watch it for free.